Hi, I'm Radha Nagarajan. I'm Senior Vice President and CTO for the Optical Engineering Group that focuses on building optical products for Marvell. So the question is scale up, scale out, and scale across. First, the difference is essentially first is the distance, but between scale up and scale out, even the distances are getting a little murky. For scale out, they run anywhere from 30 to 300 meters, and anything under 30 tends to be scale up these days. And anything beyond 2 kilometers all the way up to 2,000 kilometers is scale across, which is traditionally called the DCI market. So the designs for scale across are essentially coherent interconnects. What's inside the data center tends to be PAM4, and coherent interconnects have a completely different silicon photonics design. They tend to be dense wavelength division multiplex systems, and they also have multiple polarizations and multiple axes of modulation. And they have a modulation format called quadrature amplitude modulation, and the popular format is 16 QAM. Inside data centers is the famous PAM4. They belong to a class of modulation formats called intensity modulation direct detect. So there is a clear demarcation about scale across, and inside data center is scale up and scale out. The scale out that runs anywhere between 30, say, or even lower to 300 meters or a kilometer tends to be based on Ethernet formats. And what happens there is you run on the Ethernet track, 100, 200, 400 gigabits per second, and they need to be, in most cases, interoperable. Even if you built a co-packaged optics for a scale-out applications, more often than not, they have to interoperate with a pluggable at the other end. There could be a pluggable at the other end, by the way, because these are mixed deployment architectures. Scale up, on the other hand, tends to focus on memory disaggregation and tend to focus on memory to XPU interconnects. They tend to be bookended, meaning both sides tend to be the same module, and they tend to be of the custom interconnect, custom modulation format. Doesn't really have to be custom these days. They're also getting standardized UAL or ESUN, Ethernet Scale-Up Networks, or UAL Link and NVLink. These are common examples of a scale-up network. But the optical interconnects tend to be somewhat customized because XPUs are customized. So it's no surprise. So these are the three distinct groups, and the designs are also distinctly different, because for the scale-up networks you tend to focus a lot on density, and for the scale-out networks you tend to focus on compatibility with Ethernet data rates. So the electrical pipes tend to be what we call a fast pipe or a fat pipe. It goes higher and higher in data rate. In a scale-up network, they tend to be flatter. They tend to stay at about 50 to 60 gigabits per second, but they have more lanes. And then eventually when you go scale across, the number of lanes gets smaller and smaller. You squeeze in a lot more. And for example, we are working on a 1.6 terabit per second single wavelength link for a scale across. And that is essentially the difference between the three categories. And Marvell plays in all three. And the most recent acquisition of Celestial takes care of the scale up, and our conventional internal development takes care of the scale out, and we have a large business in scale across. Thank you.